and we'll get on to the next section. I'm going to hand this over to Rob Ambrose. I think I first met you when you had Robonaut over in Methodist, and now you moved on to Texas A&M. So, Rob, please take it away.
All right, well, good morning. Let's go ahead and start the next session. I'm Rob Ambrose, as you heard, formerly NASA, now Texas A&M. My primary title is Kathy's husband. All other titles are negotiable. We've got a wonderful panel here looking at the future of two emerging technologies, synthetic biology and robotics, and how they're making some new things possible at the intersection of space, medicine, and energy. On the panel this morning, I've got Shankar Nataraja from Exxon, led activities there in manufacturing, drones, and now material integrity. We have Moji Karimi from Cemvita, where he is the founder, CEO, and chief futurist for the company, and Shalini Yadav, who is the executive director of the Rice Synthetic Biology Institute. So good morning. I'd like to have each of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your interests, and then we'll get into some questions that we have pre-prepared and maybe from the audience as well. Shalini, would you like to go first?
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Shalini Yadav, and I am the Executive Director for Rice Synthetic Biology Institute, which is a recently established institute where we are trying to build a whole community of synthetic biologists, bringing them together to work on problems which are facing our society and the globe, and trying to build that setup here. Previously, I was at MD Anderson Cancer Center in the immunotherapy platform, where I was facilitating bringing novel first-in-human therapies into clinic. And prior to that, I was in Mount Sinai School of Medicine, working on prostate and kidney cancer, trying to understand tumor heterogeneity and developing novel diagnostic tests using single-cell genomic applications. And before that, I was at Rockefeller University, where I worked on HIV and Ebola viruses. And I did my PhD in synthetic biology, where I was rewiring cellular signaling in mammalian systems using non-native tyrosine kinases. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Moji. I'm a co-founder CEO at Cemvita. I'm passionate about multidisciplinary sciences, technology, entrepreneurship, and the future. So it's an interesting Venn diagram that I'm passionate about. And just to give you the punchline, for Cemvita, what we've done, we have re-engineered microbes that could eat carbon waste, including CO2, instead of sugar. And then instead of alcohol, they produce a oil profile. It's a sustainable bio-oil that has many applications. So it's an intersection of synthetic biology and climate tech or energy transition, which I'm happy to share today. Thank you.
Shankar?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. Shankar Nataraja, been with ExxonMobil for about 23 years. Been in the robotics space actually for about 5 years. I kind of fell into it kind of by accident. I was supporting our largest petrochemical plant in Baytown, 30 minutes outside of Houston, in a different digital role, and I kind of saw some pretty scary stuff in a sense, where I saw a lot of people kind of working from heights and in confined space locations, and safety is kind of is paramount to our corporation, and trying to make our ability to have people go into the office, come back home to their family and friends the same way. And I think there were some big opportunities where we could, drive a lot of safety improvements in the workplace through robotics. And that's what led to a drone program that I kicked up that started off there and has now reached over 100 ExxonMobil locations around the world. So we're really proud to see that program kick up, and that's kind of what led to a lot of additional robotics technologies that we've now penetrated through different parts of the company. So happy to talk a little bit more about that today. So thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you. And I'm Rob Ambrose. I formerly was at NASA, where I led the robotics program for the agency, and at the Johnson Space Center, I was the division chief for the software robotics and simulation division. And we were very focused on human space flight, trying to help people do what I thought were some of the hardest jobs in the solar system and come back safely. So a lot like Shankar, thinking about human safety. I've retired, and I'm now failing at retirement. I'm a professor at Texas A&M, and I think I'm working harder than I ever have. It's awesome. And I lead the Robotics and Automation Design Lab, and I'm the associate director for our new Space Institute, building an enormous lunar and Mars simulator facility down in the Clear Lake area on the Johnson Space Center. So these two areas have potentially a lot of impact, robotics and synthetic biology. I'd like to start with the first pre-selected questions, then we'll be happy to take others. But Shankar, why don't you give us some real-world applications and some of the challenges that you see?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I kind of talked about it real quick in my intro, but immediately the first thing that came to mind for our corporation around usage of robotics was centered around safety and really personnel safety and risk mitigation. Our CEOs and our previous CEOs have always talked about this. At the end of the day, ExxonMobil's out there to solve the world's toughest energy challenges, but we want to do it safely and sustainably and in the most environmental friendly way. And I think this is the area where robotics is really paving the way for us, because we're finding opportunities where we can take those folks that were operating from 250, 300 feet in the air, trying to inspect our flare stacks, our furnaces, some of our largest assets that have to be inspected so we can know that these units are operating correctly, they're actually producing the best quality product. And so it's not something that we can just forget about and put aside. So we're always taking that very seriously, but now we're taking them out of harm's way, and we're actually able to put these robots to find ways to collect some of the findings that we would have an extremely hard time to even detect. And we're now doing that with a combination of drone technology, piping crawlers. So we have robots that fly, we have robots that walk on the ground on 4 legs, we have robots that go underwater, both in shallow water and deep water environments, inspect our assets. And so we're seeing some of the biggest opportunities there, and that's what we're scaling right now. So I think that is probably our top priority. And then second, we're looking for opportunities to be more efficient. And I think that is going to be driven by, again, the scale we're operating at. We recently purchased Pioneer Natural Resources in the Permian that now makes ExxonMobil the largest producer in the Permian Basin with 1.7 million acres of land. And that's where we're going to be producing a lot of our unconventional oil and gas. And I think I can just tell you right now, that is a lot of land. And there's a lot of assets with that combination of that merger. And we're trying to find and use robotics now, like drones, to do a lot of those asset inspections so we can detect emissions and other parts of things that are important to us quickly and get those issues remediated as well. So really happy to see how well we're scaling out the technology to kind of solve a lot of these big problems, I would say.
Thank you. The second question which I'd like to address is describe some of the environmental and social impacts of these new technologies. And I'd like to answer that question with a short story about pumps and pipes. So about 10 years ago, I was at an event. It was at the previous location, and we had just watched live a medical procedure gaining access to a patient's heart through a femoral pathway. And it was pretty awesome for a bunch of NASA engineers to get to watch that. It was really fascinating. And then immediately after that, we had scheduled a meeting with my NASA team and Exxon. And they had a facility in the North Sea that they were needing to decommission, and it had these enormous concrete vessels sitting at the bottom of the ocean floor that over the life of the spar, they'd pumped water in and out and oil in and out as an accumulator. And for a variety of reasons, they needed to prove to some judge somewhere what was in one of these. So they were going to float a drilling rig over these large concrete cisterns and drill through the tops of them and then take samples. And they were very worried about what would come out. And, I was convinced Godzilla was living in one of them. So as we were thinking about all the problems of cutting into one of these things and the dangers associated with that, I asked, well, do these have a femoral artery? And it turns out they did. It was a 10-inch pipe that came down from the top with giant, like 1,000 horsepower pumps that they would use to pump seawater in, which would push the oil out into a ship, and then vice versa. So we actually sent some NASA engineers to the North Sea. They built a machine that clamped on one of these vessels, cut a hole into the vessel, inserted their robot. With a topside pump, we pushed it down through, and it had all kinds of cameras and sonar and sensors, and went into one of these cisterns to image it and take some samples. And not surprisingly, everybody was quite shocked what was growing in there. The sea loves oil, and there was a lot growing in there. But it's an example how, because of medicine, an energy company and a space organization got together, and it happened at Pumps and Pipes. And obviously, the whole point of that endeavor was to do a better job at mitigating the risks of decommissioning that facility for both society and the environment. So again, I think the intersection between medicine, space, and energy, it's very uniquely Houston, and I want to applaud Pumps and Pipes for bringing these communities together now for many years. The third question we'd like to pose to the panel involves cross-sector synergies, and in particular, the industrial and academic collaborations that might come. And I think this would be a good question for Dr. Yadav.
Well, yes. Basically, at MD Anderson, I was involved in a lot of industry-academia partnership projects because most of the work that I was doing was trying to bring first-in-human therapies into clinical trials and designing scientific projects around that. And I've seen a lot of innovations come out of it. For example, one of the different tumor types that we were studying, some respond to immune checkpoint therapy, some do not. And by studying those with novel next-generation sequencing technologies, we could identify a molecule in a tumor type called GBM, glioblastoma, brain tumor, which was novel and present only in the immunosuppressive microenvironment of GBM. And we were able, because we were interacting with industry and academia, we were able to start new clinical trials and studies for that molecule to bring in better treatments for the patients. So that would be one example. In the field of synthetic biology, in my current role, that is one of my major focus. How can we make industry-academia collaborations so we can push the needle towards finding solutions which industry as a whole, combining the resources together is very important, right? If you know the problems that we have to solve come from the industry. And as in academia, we are doing novel innovations, especially at Rice. There are a lot of synthetic biologists in Rice, probably the biggest concentration in entire United States at one place. And what we can do is develop novel innovations to solve problems, but that crosstalk with industry facilitates translating those technologies into solutions that will solve those problems. So one of the most important benefits is sharing of resources, providing workforce, which is even leaders in the field which will drive these things forward. And all these things will originate in an academia setting. Even any novel solutions problems that while you're scaling up, for example, in biomanufacturing, any problems or technical difficulties that you're facing, those solutions will come from academia, and these collaborations will facilitate that. An example in Asia I can give is there's SynBio group there's a BioFoundry, collaborated with a company called Pixel and made a colony picker for picking up colonies, which is a very tedious process, slows down discovery. And they were, because of that partnership, they could make a very state-of-the-art colony picker, which increases the efficiency of reaching to the right organism that you can grow in a smaller amount of time. So those are some of the benefits of industry-academia partnership that we can explore. Thanks.
Thank you. So Moji, you're the chief futurist for Cemvita. So you're the perfect person to ask this next question. It's one of my favorite questions in the world, frankly. It's, what does the future look like? And we're all waiting to hear.
You know, if you're a CEO or a co-founder at any company, you are a futurist. It's not just me, because people look at you and say, where are we going? What is the future? And it's surprising to me that a lot of CEOs don't use the actual tools for futurism to be able to have better methodology. But I think the future is about convergence. If you look at a company today, they're using software, but they're not seeing this as, you know, a new technique or something that they're using. It's just integrated into what they do. Same thing is happening with AI today, where it's not viewed anymore as this thing that we have one person that knows and is introduced into the company, but it's built into the company. So you have companies like Tesla that is basically building robots that are managed by AI. Is Tesla a car company? Is it an AI company? It's everything. And so that's what I mean by convergence. And I believe that we're going to see a lot of the same things when it comes to synthetic biology, when it comes to industrial biotech. And maybe I'll give you 3 examples from the work that we have done, and then a bit of a peek into the future based on the foresight study that we've done. And this is how we decide what applications to pursue, right? Maybe I'll start from kind of a normal to crazy in terms of the applications and impact. So the core work that Cemvita is doing is re-engineering microbes to eat carbon waste instead of sugar, and then making an oil. This is not crazy based on what is available with synthetic biology, but the breakthrough comes from what has already been done. If you look at Brazil and what they have done with their bioeconomy to be able to use sugar, even same with the US with corn, and turn that through the process of fermentation into a fuel that at times could actually compete with the cost, that's insane. That is a massive innovation that has already happened. Now imagine applying synthetic biology on top of that, so that we're not limited just to sugar or corn as feedstock, and we're not limited just to, say, alcohol as the end product. This industrial biomanufacturing would really transform how we produce sustainable molecules, right? So that's the first example, not too crazy. Second example is actually in the mining industry. You may have heard about leaching process where for copper, the companies where you remove all the ore, you stack them up, and then from the top, they introduce something like sulfuric acid, and this is how they separate the copper from the rock. Turns out there's microbes that could do the same job, and it's a process called bioleaching. It was a surprise to me when I first learned that about 15% of world's copper today is made with microbes in this bioleaching process. So big companies like BHP, Rio Tinto, others are using this very actively. Now, what we did, and eventually we spun that out as its own company called Endolith, is we optimized the microbes so that we could maintain the recovery, so that we could improve the performance throughout time, so that they could get more copper out of the same resource. So this feature of integration of synthetic biology with environmental microbiology for sustainability use cases, I think it is something that is going to continue to grow. Third example, this is my favorite and it's probably the craziest, is, you know, you talked about ExxonMobil and this is about oil and gas, right? If you think about it, oil and gas, we as humans, we did not make it. It's products of nature, right? So the legacy of the industry is about how to find where it is, that's exploration, how to get to it, that's drilling, how to get it out, that's production, and then you have a whole downstream process. But if you go back to the root, the question is, can we replicate the same process in the subsurface? Do we have the tools now to understand what is happening in the chain, and then why does it take so long? And in what ways can we accelerate the process? Can we bring also the carbon emissions of that down? So the work that we did was, we said, let's go to end-of-life oil and gas reservoirs and not think of it as a place where there's oil and gas to explore, but think of it as a subsurface biorefinery that already has the ambient pressure, temperature that's required. And we introduced microbes in the subsurface, and these microbes have one job, is to eat the oil and produce hydrogen. We tested this in the Permian Basin, and they did it. Like, they produce hydrogen. And so it's like, wow. So think about how many end-of-life oil and gas assets do we have, and what happens to them? We have to spend even more money to plug and abandon them. Some become problematic because they produce methane. But if you could give them a new life using these microbes to produce hydrogen in situ with very minimal carbon emissions, very minimal cost, because your capex is already spent. This is an end-of-life asset that's a liability. That's another example of how we could do environmental microbiology that is underpinned by synthetic biology and our understanding to integrate, say, upstream and downstream. So integration, convergence, I think, is where the future is going. The rest is for companies to really build roadmaps to what their preferred future looks like, and then start the strategy work process to kind of nudge different drivers to influence them to go in that direction. Because no one could predict the future, but you could at least define what your preferred future is. And that is really the job of a futurist, is not to predict, but is to highlight what different futures are possible and which one is your preferred future, and thus build a roadmap for that use case.
Well put. So I'd like to go back to Dr. Yadav and ask on the subject of agriculture and food in general. It seems like food is having a moment. It's going high tech. At Texas A&M, we've been working in food for a long time. We provide the food for the International Space Station. Food is critical in health outcomes. Nutrition's key. What are your thoughts on the impact of synthetic biology on food production and agriculture in general?
Well, synthetic biology is a science which will transform almost every industry, including food and agriculture, and we already have seen examples like Beyond Burger or meat, which is grown in the lab with microbes, which is already a multi-million-dollar industry, and people are also making dairy alternatives, and agriculture will be transformed because with the help of synthetic biology, you can imagine a future where you will have plants which will be pest resistant, grow in drought conditions, and will have more healthier plants producing molecules which are beneficial for our health. So it will solve a major problem of food crisis that might come in the future because of increasing population. And the solutions that will solve that problem probably would be based in synthetic biology. In terms of space, it's extremely interesting because for the future of space will require a lot of synthetic biology for the innovations that are needed. And again, I can give you example that people in RISE, some of the members of the Synthetic Biology Institute, who are actually driving innovations in this area where they are trying to make very novel antibiotics, which will target only the pathogen. And right now, if you take an antibiotic, it will wipe off your entire gut microbiome, good and bad bacteria. But Professor Geoff Silberg and James Chappell, they are working on very novel antibiotics which will only target the pathogenic bacteria, sparing your good bacteria. And you can imagine a future in which in space you can build these things on demand, as well as food probiotics, or as you need it, you can have it in a dried format, and then you can reconstitute it as needed. Even I think we can imagine a future where you can have automated robots where they are monitoring the health directly by biosensors derived from microbes which are in space, and that should facilitate a lot of integration between robotics and synthetic biology for solving agricultural and food problems. And I gave you 2 examples where, another one that I can think of is recently we were trying to make a collaboration with a company called Rhodium in the space. It's the biggest life sciences company in space. And they have tried to grow coriander in space and cilantro. And what they saw, it is very fascinating that they saw that they had more leaves in space. So basically more biomass. So do not know the mechanisms, but it is pretty interesting that you can learn a lot from going into space, and you can bring that back and use it on Earth. So in a way, synthetic biology is the future in this area, which will transform things. Thanks.
So about 20 years ago, we had a project at NASA where we put one individual in a chamber adjacent to a second chamber that had plants, and we were using a genetically engineered pygmy wheat that was short, and it was in very small trays, and it was about the plant chamber was 15 feet in diameter and about 30 feet long, and that was an adequate amount of plant for the cellular respiration of one person. And we were looking at using the plant's chemistry instead of plumbing. Normally you would have large tanks and pumps and tank the oxygen or the carbon dioxide to try and maintain levels. And what we found is we just dimmed the lights. So when the astronaut would go to sleep, we would dim the lights. And when the astronaut was working out, we would crank the lights, and we're able to have a beautiful O2, CO2 balance between about 15 by 30 feet of wheat and one human being. And very simple compared to lots of complicated hardware. Of course, the astronaut would be very motivated to take care of the plants. Very motivated. So that's not a lot of area. Shankar, you mentioned massive amounts of area. And one of the things that Texas has always done is put these things together. So there for a long time were tax incentives. If you had an oil well and a certain number of cattle per acre, you'd get a tax credit. We're now seeing cattle and crops with wind systems. And in all these massive areas, guess what they're using, whether it's wind or agriculture or oil and gas, it's drones. Could you tell us about how you see a lot of this drone work that came from agriculture being applied in these vast areas that you told us about, and how maybe there's some overlap with agriculture and energy?
Yeah, I mean, I think just fundamentally, I think about going to the question about the future, right? And I've got 2 kids, 3 and 7, and I just see that I don't expect them to start doing some of this work that I've seen happen in agriculture or like field work. Right? We're starting in the field, or like some of the hazardous work we have to do to run an oil and gas company of our size. And I kind of look at the optics of this stretching across different industries that have quite a bit of manual labor. And we use the words the 3Ds. I don't like one of the words. You say dumb, dirty, and dangerous. I like the word you use, mundane. But this is work that I just don't see the future generation going to chase. And fundamentally, these are roles that still have to be done. You can't get through the operation otherwise. And so for me, when you look at large vasts of land like this, where we're going to be producing almost 2 million barrels of oil and gas per day by 2027, we can't today find enough regulatory technicians, inspectors, repair folks that can actually go and work on all this equipment. Today, we can't find enough. Not everybody wants to live in West Texas and New Mexico, where it's pretty much there's nothing to do. And if you haven't seen these places, it's pretty desolate. So this is where we see a really ripe opportunity, right? We're not displacing positions, We're not displacing roles that people are going to chase, want to do. This is an area that robots are ripe to go solve a very big challenge right now for us. And that today, we're using drones and other kinds of robotic technology to do that. And these drones, I like to call them the second set of computer eyes, because they have abilities that for us humans is hard. I mean, if I told you to go look at a well pad every day and tell me what changes happen from this day to the next day, I'll guarantee you, as humans, we're all going to make mistakes. And we're probably going to miss something. But these robots, with the integrated AI capabilities we're putting into them, with the computer vision, machine learning, and AI that processing on the back end, they can tell us what level of corrosion change from day to day, what kind of vegetation changes from day to day, what do we need to go repair first and help us prioritize our work. That kind of level of intelligence is something that we're really going to need at a point to be able to keep that level of scale going, and also keeping our ability to check the quality of our equipment, our operations, and deliver high quality products to our customers on time, reliably. So for me, that's where I see this going, and where we're really spending a lot of R&D now is on the repair side. Because today we can go, and a computer vision, machine learning, AI capability can tell you there's corrosion, or there's coating failure, or there's a crack forming. But at the end of the day, somebody has to go fix one of these issues, and we want to help work the next piece of it, which is the physical layer, which is like, can I equip a drone with a pair of tools and a drill or a hammer or whatever it takes to go and actually do the repair itself and complete the full maintenance life cycle beyond inspection. So that's a little bit about where we're heading with ExxonMobil.
Well, so I just want to basically ask a favor. I'm very concerned about America's fear of robotics. You may be familiar with the best robotics lab that we have. It's called Hollywood. Amazing BS coming out. Science fiction there. But it seems to have made Americans afraid of robotics. And I think it's probably the excuse is they'll take my uncle's job, or they're going to take over the world, or some nonsense like that. But I think it's more deep than that. I think there's an individuality in the American spirit that's kind of the opposite of a robot. Being called a robot is that's a put down, I guess, to an American. But it's really holding us back. Other countries have adopted robotics and automation much more aggressively than America has. I mean, it is really holding us back. But I think we're at this moment, as Shankar said, we are not able to find people to do these jobs. We are at a sustained 4% unemployment. We cannot field the technicians to go do these jobs. And then beyond that, the new machine learning algorithms that need that data, like a photo of the same wellhead every day at noon for the last 1,000 days, that's a terrible thing for a person to do, to go take a picture 1,000 days in a row of the same thing. But it's a great work for a robot. So we're at a moment where we are now thinking about our inability to field people to do these jobs, and I ask a favor to be open-minded. This isn't going to put someone out of a job. In fact, you can't even really do some of these jobs adequately as a person. So I know the movies can be scary. Boo-hoo. We've got jobs to do. We've got industry that is struggling with a 4% unemployment. Please be open to it. I assure you, your kids are. They love robotics. If you've ever gone to a K through 12 robotics competition, please don't pass on that fear to those children, because we've got to be able to step up and automate in these key industries. And frankly, the rest of the world's already doing that. They're not afraid of Hollywood like we are. So I'm sorry I brought up Hollywood, but let's talk about the future one last time. Moji, any other thoughts you have on where we might go with synthetic biology and robotics in the future? And then that'll wrap us up.
So we did this study at Cemvita where we looked at, it's called Foresight, where you look at basically you're trying to understand different trends and drivers and then live in that future where different drivers converge. And then based on what drivers converge, what could happen. I use the example, it's almost like if you're, in 1990s, you're watching the trend of internet, Wi-Fi, GPS, and cell phone technology. And once this all becomes one in someone's pocket, Uber is inevitable. Like, it is going to happen. But it's a question of seeing different convergences. So what I see, there's one use case that came out of that study that is super exciting, and it's for biological data storage and computing. Just think about how much, any conference they're talking about, okay, how much data and how much storage we need for AI, we need all these new data centers. CEO of Schlumberger, I was in a panel, I asked him, what is the future of Schlumberger? He said, we want to be an AI company. We want to be the energy provider for companies who build and manage these data centers, right? This is how big this use case is becoming. And if you think about just the elegance of the data storage in DNA, in peptides, how efficient it is, even in our body, right? And really we're not utilizing that. We're still just building bigger data centers and bigger power plants to supply them. Even if it's solar or wind or not, it doesn't matter. It still requires that much energy. But I think synthetic biology could be an enabler for that. But doing the industrial biotech, this would not happen without industries collaborating and kind of co-evolving together. So personally, that is one area that I'm super interested in, the biological data storage and computing. There's many other use cases, especially in energy transition with microbial fuel cells, self-healing concrete, for buildings, many other use cases. But yeah, all super exciting to watch.
Well, I want to thank the panel, and I want to thank Pumps and Pipes for bringing these communities together. Thank you very much.